Hey, welcome back guys. Dr. Jason Wan here. I want to share with you guys 3 key tips in order to help you optimize your deadlift and ensure that you do it injury-free. So stay tuned. So I want to share with you guys first what a conventional deadlift looks like. So what you usually assume is that you put your feet underneath, simply grab it up, lift, and then squeeze your glutes. But I want to share with you guys, again, 3 tips that will ensure that you optimize your form and ensure that you're engaging the right muscles. So people fail to realize that your lat is actually a muscle that attaches from your shoulder, but actually attaches into your middle of your back and also something called your thoracolumbar fascia. Your thoracolumbar fascia is a large sheath of tissue that actually lines your lower back. So very often clients will not know exactly how to optimize engaging their lats before they even lift off the bar. So let me share with you, the first tip is called the anti-shrug. So the anti-shrug is when we lift up, we bring our shoulders towards our ears. We wanna drive our shoulders as far away from our shoulders as possible. When you do that and you're trying to lengthen your arms, almost like, I call them orangutan arms, you lengthen them, you're gonna start to feel that activation in your lat. So once you do that, once you activate your lat, you're able to then lift the bar, and as you keep your shoulders away from your ears, from that bent forward position, I want to drive my shoulders not just down, but also into my pockets. So as you can see, it's down, and you can see my arms kind of go backwards into my pockets. That way, if I try to shove the shoulder blades into my pockets, I'm going to keep that bar close to me, and that's what's going to allow me to ensure that I get a proper lift off the floor, while also making sure that actually, if you see some people, they round their backs on their deadlifts, but when you engage your shoulders by pulling it down away from your ears and into your pockets, that's going to ensure that your back stays straight. So let's get into our second tip. So our second tip here is called taking the slack out of the bar. What that means is that there's usually a space between the plate as well as the bell. There's usually a small micro plate. And so a lot of people, when they get into their deadlift, they're going to lift it up. And yes, they may engage your lats, but they don't take the slack out. And there's usually that little sound, that little clang. It's very hard to hear from here, but there is that little space where if you don't take out that slack, you're not going to get the bar in contact with the plate itself. And that little bit of space leaves potential for injury. So what I tend to do is, again, by engaging the lats, that takes up some of the slack, but we also just want to take out the slack with some of that hamstrings. Our hamstring muscle is being stretched when we bend forward, and especially when we bend forward with more of a straight back position, we'll tend to feel some tightness in our thighs. If we round our back, we don't really feel our hamstrings as much. So how we assume that is I'm going to get my shins close to the bar, and as I get into my anti-shrug, like the first tip, the very first thing I like to do is I like to preload my hamstrings by locking out my knees. And then what I'll do is I'll lift my chest up, and then I feel that stretch in my hamstrings. Once I take that slack out of the bar, again, I lock it out just to feel my hamstrings, get my knees toward the bar, and lift up, squeeze my glutes. Another way you can assume that is you got to think about basically your butthole. Your butthole, think of it like a flashlight. If the butthole is pointed down towards the floor like so, then basically I'm rounding my pelvis out and I'm shining the light down. I want to think about shining the light directly behind me, and I know that's TMI, it sounds a little funny, but when you think of it that way, again, I'm going to assume the anti-shrug and think about, again, as your butthole as pointing straight back towards the wall. So if I do that and I point it back instead of down this way, as you can see, that's pointing it down, I'm going to shine the light backwards before I lift up, okay? So hopefully you guys can kind of understand taking the slack out with your hamstrings, but also shining the light backwards will ensure that you optimize taking all the slack out while also lifting that bar properly. The last and final tip is called intra-abdominal pressure. Intra-abdominal pressure is where we are pushing a lot of the air down into the lower concavity in order to have equal and outward distribution across our rib cage, as well as all the other muscles that will not just protect our organs, but also our lower back. So intra-abdominal pressure is very important because when we brace our body, then we are stronger during the lift. However, if we don't brace properly, then a lot of times the bar or the weight will outdo our body, and that can lead to injury. So think of like a can. So think of like a 7-Up can, where if the can is open and you actually open it, the pressure has been let out. So usually if you step on that can, even with fluid, it is going to crack with very, not that much amount of weight. However, if you look at like a closed can that has the fluid in it, also has been opened, you'll realize that you can put a significant amount of your weight onto the can as you put your foot onto that can, and a lot of times it doesn't burst. And as the same thing goes, that when you learn proper intra-abdominal pressure, you will be able to lift heavier pretty immediately. So I always consider this, and I've told a lot of my clients this, called an underwater analogy. If you think about your head, I would say over water, or a lot of times that when your head gets over water, you usually are able to breathe, but usually when you're underwater to any degree, you usually want to be holding your breath. So down below, once I set up, I'm going to show you and demonstrate that, is that usually I'll take a deep breath. I will not let my breath out until I'm at the top where my head is over water. And this is usually in reference to barbell squats. So if I had a bar on my back right now, my head is over water, I'm going to breathe, hold my breath. As I go underwater, I'm not going to let my breath out until I come up. And that's the same thing goes as that closed can analogy, where I'm holding a lot of that air pressure in my belly, which is my center of gravity, which will protect my overall spine and lead to more spinal rigidity. Okay, so let me go ahead and show you on the deadlift now. So as I'm down here, like I said, the anti-shrug, let's put that together. We're also ensuring that we're pointing the light backwards, our belt hole backwards. So we're taking the slack out of the bar. But then when I'm assuming getting into that position, I wanna make sure that I'm here, okay, coming down. So I take the deep breath here. And then come back down. Again, one more time. Take that deep breath at the top. And then come back, okay? So when you're doing that properly, you are going to create that closed can. You're going to maintain that pressure down. And one common mistake that I see a lot of our clients make is that when they're breathing, is that they will usually, the breath, they're usually going to have their rib cage expand. So what that means is we usually want our ribs, so our rib line, you'll see a lot of people stay in this arch position. That's when the ribs are too far forward in front of our pelvis or our ASIS. So when we take that breath, we usually want to breathe like so, where our ribs are directly stacked on top of our pelvis, which is what we call pelvic stacking. But with some people, they're more chest breathers. So you'll see them breathe like this. Where their chest goes forward, they go barrel chested. And what that does is you end up lifting with a more lumbar spine extended position, as you can see. I want to minimize some of that by, again, breathing not from my chest per se, but breathing more from my belly. And then once you see it, you want to have that flatness from your rib cage down. And that way will ensure that you're lifting more with a neutral spine. And again, ensure that we optimize our form and technique with the deadlift. Hey, if you found this video helpful, definitely leave me some feedback in the comments. Let me know which tip you're going to use as well. And also, if you found it helpful, please go ahead and like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any great content. I'll be posting at least on a weekly basis and getting your feedback to ensure what you want to see in terms of how to optimize your strength, mobility, resilience, and be back to a pain-free life. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.